Hello and welcome to the show. Now I've got some interesting guests today in the studio, and that's Hein Kaiser. He's the head of corporate affairs for Mango Airlines. Now, Mango Airlines is an airline that's been coming up for a long time in South Africa. We've seen the brand growing, and we're going to find out how they've been remaining in the sky. Hein, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you going?
I'm doing well, thank you. Now, I've always wanted to have someone from an airline that I could say, please switch off your cell phone, and I did that this morning. So I'm happy about that. That's the only thing that irks me off about an airline. But Mango is different because I at least get to put on that Chiku neck later on down in the flight.
It's a lot of fun, isn't it?
Yes, which I'm not getting from anyone else. But let's start with Mango itself. I remember back in the day when it was launched, there was this big issue about mango, banana, apple kind of thing. So it's like, where did all of that come from? Because it's an interesting name for an airline.
It is, and unfortunately, the story behind the name isn't that glamorous. We were all sitting around a table thinking, what are we going to call this airline? And we were going through leather swatches to try and figure out what color the seats must be inside the aircraft. And there was this really bright orange color, and it was called Mango. And that's really where it comes from a leather swatch book.
That's interesting. So it wasn't any marketing kind of high-level thinking to it, it just happened?
Not at all. It was just, it happened by fluke. And I think sometimes they say the best things happen by accident. And
I don't think it's a term I would mention during an airline interview.
Probably not.
No, of course.
But per chance, the best things happen by chance. Yes. And so it was complete fluke, but I think the name just grew on everybody. And it's been very successful since then.
It's become one of South Africa's foremost brands in terms of, we all know who Mango Airlines is after all these years. Tell us a bit about those initial days. You were there from the beginning. Did you know where you guys were going? Was it, we're not sure yet, we have a plan, it's a market that's very tight, it's the airline industry. I know that you're backed by South African Airways, so there's some consolation around that. Tell us about those initial days.
Okay, just to clarify on the one point, we might belong to SA, but we operate completely on our own balance sheet. We are completely at an arm's length from them. But we've always had a very clear plan right from the day dot in the planning days before we even launched, before anybody knew Mango was going to be around, was the fact that there is an airline that you need for all the people. There were low-cost airlines in the country, but the models were almost like a hybrid, kind of not a complete pure low-cost model, where our low-cost model is very much based on the Southwests and the Ryanairs of the world. The South African market, though, is a little bit different. We're very spoiled in this country in terms of aviation. So you have to add a couple of extra frills, for example, our business product Mango Plus or Mango Flex, which you won't find overseas. However, a good thing for us is that when we launched those products, the guy EasyJets and the Ryanairs and all the other guys around the world actually followed. So I suppose
they followed you guys. You talk about people like Ryanair.
Absolutely.
That's extremely
EasyJet Plus,
which is large airlines, and they've been there for many years.
Yeah, and we were the first low-cost airline in the world to develop a business product, which was quite a feather in our cap. I'd say we did that 2 years into the business. Ahead of that, for us, the whole business is based around innovation. So outside of the fact that aviation is a very commoditized industry and getting on a plane these days is like getting onto a bus almost, you just get there quicker, is that technology is very important for us. So we've got our apps and we've got a very wide distribution network. We're the first airline to sell air tickets through a grocery shop in this country, through ShopRite and Checkers money market counters.
So we're sort of bringing the product down to a level where anyone could just access what they needed to.
Absolutely. In the past, you had a choice, I suppose. You could either go online, and if you had a credit card, a Visa, or a Master, you could buy a ticket, or you would have to go through a travel agent. So what the change is that retailing through ShopRite and Checkers did is you can go there with your hard-earned cash, buy a ticket, for example. We're also the only airline in the world that still, after 10 years, accepts store charge cards. So your Edgar's and your Jet account card, you can actually buy a flight on. So what it's done for us is it's expanded the market substantially, and it's acted as a lever to grow the market. So there are, for example, a couple of million people who might not have credit cards, but they have an Edgar's or a Jet account. They can now fly. So for us, it's all about stimulating the market, and that is really the purpose of a low-cost airline. If you look at a route like Cape Town, Bloemfontein, for example, which is a very strong route for us. But before we entered the market, there was absolutely zero demand. Or not necessarily zero demand, but very little demand.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So the purpose of a low-cost airline in that sense is to stimulate the market and to get people to want to fly because it is more affordable. So 10 years later, it's one of our strongest routes. There's a lot of traffic moving between the two cities. And one could say the same pretty much for a lot of routes that Ryanair and EasyJet, etc., have developed, or Southwest for that matter, in the States. So there's a very definite role for low-cost airlines in terms of delivering the market. There's a very definite role for low-cost airlines in terms of creating new markets and growing the market. Unfortunately, at this time, the industry in South Africa is a little bit overtraded. Everybody always guns for Joburg, Cape Town because it's the sexiest route and you think you're going to make a whole lot of money, etc. Unfortunately, it is not so. So at the moment, the market has grown over the last year by about 2%, but the number of seats available in the market has grown by 7%. So there's a 5% disparity or 5% too many seats. And you can see, for example, some of our competitors were grounded recently because they didn't pay their bills. Why? Because everybody is undercutting and selling below cost, and that is not good for cash flow, and it's not good for the industry.
We see something interesting happening there. If you're talking about the time when Mango started, I think the airline industry has been turbulent, to say the least. Yes, correct. Over where we see the fallout of Flight Star back in the day. We see Velvet Sky dropping out of the sky. We see a lot of people sort of falling out of the sky there. So, and then nationwide, from an engine dropping off to everything else. All these things because of economic downturn, and at the same time getting into an industry that you're saying only has an X amount of travelers over an X amount of service providers. But you go inside there, and you guys are starting to cap that market. What's that part of the road been like?
It's been tough. I think it was Richard Branson that said, if you want to make $1 million, start with $1 billion, and you'll end up with $1 million if you start an airline. So, and that is really what it's all about. Yes. and that is really what it is about an airline. It's a very tough industry. It changes all the time. You know, it's and it's very challenging, particularly in a market like South Africa, where, as I've said, the market is overtraded, the routes are overtraded. It's not sexy to own an airline. You know, it's really tough.
Mango stands out for that reason, and that's offering a service that one never thought was possible, because generally a member of the public is always told that you won't, you know, you're getting into this tube and you're not going to be able to contact with anyone, land on the other side, and somebody could have died and things could have happened while you were in the 2-hour bubble. And that was always my concern. One of the reasons I fly with Mango all the time is the G-Connect, giving you access, although it doesn't allow me to send pictures and all kinds of things that I normally do, but that communication is there for a passenger with people on the ground. I actually get told where we are because my sister tends to go to the flight radar and tells me you're over Kimberley now, and I don't know. So she tracks it, sends it to me, kind of thing. So that part is, I think, is innovative for a low-cost airline. Tell us a bit about the in-cabin service. What do we expect to see on Mango right now?
The funny thing about the G-Connect in-flight Wi-Fi service is that in the first 6 months after we launched, almost every single tweet or every single Facebook post that originated through the service was, here we are sitting on a plane, people taking pictures. So there's there was a brag factor, I suppose, associated with it in the beginning. But slowly but surely, it's become a very critical business tool. I know that not our entire fleet is fitted with the service as yet. So the number of complaints we get from business people who want to remain in touch, whether it's FOMO, in terms of fear of missing out, or actually critical business that gets conducted on board the aircraft, it's fascinating how just adding a bit of information technology onto a flight can really impact not only the popularity of your brand, etc., but also how people use their time. It is absolutely fascinating. Now, over and above that, what we like to brag about as well is we've re-kitted our entire fleet of 10 aircraft with new seats.
10 aircrafts now.
Yeah.
I always thought it was sitting around 5. I didn't know it's gone up to 10. That's quite a bit.
The reason you probably don't see our aircraft at the airports is because they're always flying.
Yeah, of course.
A big difference for Mango is that we sweat our assets. It's a fundamental principle of the low-cost model. If your aircraft's not flying, you ain't making money.
Correct, yes.
So we're always in the skies.
No, of course. I noticed the seats are nicer. When I initially got onto them, I thought that they cannot recline, but I see that button is moved to the bottom left. And so I know that the streamline of the seat is giving that extra bit of legroom and stuff like that. Where did that design come from?
The new seats are very comfortable. So it's a very big asset for us and a very big selling point over and above the payment methods and the onboard Wi-Fi, etc. Very important, and we've certainly had a very positive response to it.
Now here's my take on Mango and why I'm flying Mango. It's because it's a combination. It's that G Connect. It's the pricing. We're getting to Johannesburg when we need to get to Johannesburg for a much lower rate. At the same time, not somebody that's going to have a full meal at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'm going to just buy the muffin and a coffee. So happy to add on 20 and 30 bucks as opposed to a lower ticket price, 30 bucks for a nice coffee and muffin, whatever it might be. Have your G Connect and you're in Johannesburg in 2 hours time. So the model really works for even business people. I've been catching lots of business people on the flights that I know that I thought would be normally flying business class on a bigger airline, but they're just simply not anymore, because it's all about just getting to destination, and that's where Mango has really fitted into that space.
You know, you're right, and I think there's a dual consequence of perhaps more business people traveling with low-cost airlines. Is number one, and we've seen a trend since 2008 with the global financial crisis, that more and more companies are looking at saving money. We're heading towards a recession again now, it seems. So we can expect a little bit more of that. The second part is, do you really need a business class seat for an hour and a half's flight from point to point?
I've been asking that question all my life.
Yeah. And for a couple of grand cheaper, you know, you can spend it on a nice hotel, a nice meal, or you can save that money. And that is really what it's all about. So we've seen a lot of companies and corporates move towards low-cost airlines. It's really good for us.
When you look at the Mango brand and you look at the philosophy around the cabin service and stuff like that, I call it the philosophy because I noticed that there are different temperaments on different aircraft. Because I've flown internationally and all those kind of things. So you see different languages and different ideas going on there. The Mango philosophy is very similar to being on SAA. I'm not sure if the training might be coming from those quarters or not. So it's an interesting thing for me as a passenger to note that it's not like you're being treated like you're a low-cost passenger on Mango. You're still getting the same service, you're still getting the same friendliness, and that's something that I like about the airline.
Thank you, that's really nice of you, because for us, our training is very, very simple. We go on a very, very simple philosophy about being friendly, professional, efficient, and consistent about what we do. And that's really what the business is all about. Culturally, though, I think, and this is a consequence of, I think, a team that has been there since day dot, as well as new people joining the company. There's an infectious mood inside Mango, and there is absolute passion. There's not a time, I mean, I just flew in this morning at the crack of dawn into Cape Town, but there's not a moment that you cannot see a smile on a colleague's face, etc. And you know, also for us as a business, when there's a busy queue at the airport, we all come down out of the office and come and help. And that is who we are. So I think from a corporate culture side, it probably translates into your onboard experience or your experience at the airport. I'm not saying that nobody ever has a bad day and all of us get grumpy. But at the end of the day, for us, it's all about the business. It's without our customers and our guests, we don't have a business. And on the other side, without our colleagues, we don't have a business that appeals to our customers.
Great. So we find a busy period coming up now. It's going for December. And so we have all kinds of travelers. So we have the family unit going. So grandmother, grandfather's going with, and we have the middle ages, and then we have the kids. So you're talking about 3 different types of passengers here. Elderly people might be needing wheelchairs, younger people need to be entertained, but tell us a bit about how you deal through December with this kind of thing, because there's lots of demand going on now.
December is really a fun period for holiday makers, but not so much for all of us in the aviation and possibly the hospitality industry. Now, what happens during that period and any other period is airlines always make provision for people with special needs. Each airline has a special number where you can book a wheelchair, or you can request assistance, etc. So from that perspective, there's always that service available. During December, the pressure is on though, and you need to perform at your absolute peak. So there's no public holidays for us. But yeah, so you do have a different mix of people, but it just seems to work. And I think a lot of that has to also do with the professionalism of our cabin crew and how they manage to maintain or manage order on board, so to speak, or manage the mood. And I think to me that is, I've got a lot of friends in the company who are cabin crew, and I think they probably have one of the hardest jobs because they have the direct customer-facing engagement on the front line all the time. So from that perspective, I think the pressure is all on them and our colleagues at check-in, etc., to provide a service. And that's really what you want at the end of the day. Whether you're paying 500 Rand or 1,000 Rand for a seat on an aircraft, you're still paying your good money, and you want or expect a certain level of service outside of getting from point A to point B. And I think maintaining that, whether it's December or a day in the middle of the week when nobody wants to fly, it is really important.
I think it's always a challenge. I know that your crew takes off in the morning on one destination, maybe goes to another one and ends off back in the same destination or something like that. And it always amazes me that here we go, and here we're dealing with this 200 people again for the third time today, and it's about smiling with them and making sure that they're happy. And they have some strange requests sometimes. I've heard strange requests by passengers already for items that they could purchase at the local Pick n Pay right now, but I mean, there's no Pick n Pay up there kind of thing. That kind of thing happens. Yes. So I think there's a challenge in all of that, and if the staff can remain smiling, I think that's a feather in the cap. Tell us a bit about your pilots, your captains. We don't see them anymore as we did in the past because of security purposes, but we hear them and they sound friendly. Tell us a bit about them.
Yeah, our flight deck, they're a bunch of great guys. Another thing about Mango is that everybody mixes. There's no separation. You might do a different job or your title might be different, but in our company everybody pretty much is the same, and we all engage and commune with one another, and there's no real separation. It's a very flat structure, very flat working environment. So we see each other all the time. The business is still small enough. We're about 650 people. We all know one another wherever you go in the country. So it is like a family, and that is the best thing about working at Mango. Our pilots, they're very highly trained, very highly skilled. They come from various different backgrounds. Some have used to work at SAA, some used to work at other airlines, but they're all fantastic and very professional. We also have our training captain, Captain Scully Levine, who's world famous for his acrobatics, and he always does our air shows where we take our 73.
We don't see any of that happening with the 737 soon.
We've just done 2 this year.
What's acrobatics I'm talking about?
Oh, display flights.
Yeah.
No, we do. We participate in air shows. It's quite a pricey affair, so we're always looking for sponsorship if anybody's listening. But it is absolutely fantastic. Scully is probably one of the best all around the world. He flew, he used to work for other airlines, and he flew giant 747s all over the world as well. So it's quite a mix. Our pilots are fantastic, and again, they also share the culture of the business.
And as we just heading into the end of the discussion and just going through to thinking about December and that sort of thing, what's your advice to your travelers that will be joining you as guests? I know you guys don't call them passengers, you call them guests. So your guest is coming on board, and what's your advice during December? We know that airports are going to be busy. There might be delays, different things happen. We had some issues with airlines this week, technical difficulties with other airlines, for example. What's your advice to travelers?
Do you know what? I think to make your own life as easy as possible as well, and work with the airline to streamline your traveling process. So for us, for example, it would be download the app. If you've got an Android, a BlackBerry 10 and above device, or Apple or Windows.
I can't survive without the app, I must tell you.
Exactly.
Those days of checking in online is finished for me now.
Yeah.
It's just going to the app and done.
Exactly. Get your boarding pass on your phone, or use the self-check-in machines and avoid the queues. Yes, there is still the bag drop process, but it cuts a couple of minutes out of your journey. Make sure that you go at least 2 hours before the flight. Even this morning at OR Tambo, the queue for security extended all the way past our check-in counters and took me half an hour to get through security. So plan your trip well and make sure that you don't inconvenience yourself or others, because no airline is going to wait for you if you are late. No matter how deserving you think you are, there's 150 or 180 other people on the flight that you are delaying. So make sure that you plan correctly, pack correctly, and check in online.
I think many passengers are still aloof to an idea, and that's that we hand our bags to an airline, and that airline is purely responsible for that bag in the end of the day. I think throughout December we might experience problems, because no matter what airport you go in the world and no matter what measure they put in place, staff can do things that you wouldn't want done to what you need, and not specifically the airline staff, but an airport has its own staff that does baggage handling and all those kind of things. What's your advice to people packing so that they make sure that their items are secured?
Cool. Yeah, let me myth bust a little bit here for you as well. That outside of check-in, when the check-in agent picks up your suitcase, puts it on the belt, that is the last time anybody from the airline actually touches your baggage.
Exactly. That's what I've been trying to say.
Yes.
Yes. But for some odd reason, people think that it's the airline that takes your bag, and maybe the same lady that took your bag will run to the plane, pack it in, and jump out the other side and take it out for you. So this doesn't happen that way.
Aviation is a very complex business. There are so many aspects and facets of it, so many people involved in actually getting a flight ready to go, whether it's the baggage handler, whether it's the guy who drives the tug, or whether it's the person who loads the catering. It is very complex, and there are a lot of people involved in ensuring. That's why you should never be late, because you lose your slot for takeoff. So it is very complex, and yes, there is pilferage. It's an unfortunate reality. We've seen it all over the world. Unfortunately, South Africa is no different. But if you look on your booking confirmation, for example, from most airlines, it very clearly advises you, do not pack any valuables in. Do not put your diamond jewelry in your check-in bags. Do not put your expensive perfume or a camera, etc., in your check-in bags, because chances are somebody else might go home with it. Take it on board with you, and if you don't necessarily need it, leave it at home.
I think that's some sound advice, and I'm looking forward to being on the next Mango flight with you. We've been enjoying it for the time that we have been. I think that Mango is going many places. Just before we end off, one or two bits about the future plans of the airline. Where do you see you going? We know that you can only fly as high as 37,000 feet, but what are the future plans?
Well, what did I say in Pinky in the Brain? Take over the world? No, I'm joking. But for us, Mango is a very ambitious airline. You know, we started with 4 aircraft in 2006, and we've grown quite rapidly, but also prudently, so that we don't end up being a failed airline. For us, success is absolutely important. We're all extremely ambitious individuals who work at Mango, and we want to see the airline soar. So Africa is definitely on our radar. Our CEO spoke about or dropped a few hints about some destinations, maybe Mauritius, maybe Kilimanjaro, maybe somewhere else. The domestic market at the moment is completely oversaturated. So Africa definitely is the next frontier. And if you look earlier this year in February, the African Union also discussed the implementation of, finally the implementation of the Yamoussoukro Declaration, which means that Africa is going to have open skies pretty soon. And that means that, in terms of bilateral agreements at the moment, it's very restrictive in terms of which airlines and which countries can commute and how many flights per week they can do. So once the Yamoussoukro Declaration or decision becomes an implementation, it means prices are going to fall. We're going to see a situation in Africa very similar to Europe, which has had open skies for almost 2 decades. So there's a lot to look forward to and a lot of growth opportunity for an airline like Mango.
And we wish you well, and we hope to see you flying soon.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on the show.
Hein Kaiser from Mango Airlines, taking us to places where we need to be. It's been interesting, and I know that with December coming up and all the holidays, many people will be traveling, and so there's some sound advice from one of the guys right on top of Mango Airlines. Until next time, goodbye.